Jacqueline.
Welcome to our first Gardening with Edibles Facebook Live. Gardening with Gardening with Edibles, was launched in June, to encourage everyone, to grow edibles at home. All right. And if you have signed up, you will have received your seed packet that looks like this. And if you have not received it, sorry, wrong direction now. Therefore, this is how it looks like. You will get it by end August. Okay? Yeah. So today, Jacqueline and I will share with you how to start seedlings. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are at a loss, as to how to start your vegetable seedlings. And today we're going to share with you how to do it.
Yes.
So, what are the materials you actually need? All right. So, first, I will tell you to use a seed raising mix tray that looks like that, which is really big, so that you can, keep the soil mix inside, the seed raising mix inside, so that you don't make a mess. Other things that you need will be seed raising trays that look like this. This is the one with many small cell holes. This is good for raising leafy vegetable seeds. Okay, and what Jacqueline is holding up just now is a seed tray with larger holes. This is good for raising fruited vegetable seeds. Okay, so the next thing that I'm pretty sure a lot of you will ask is that, hey, should I use soil? And then there's a thing called seed raising mix. Where to buy?
What's the difference?
Okay, the seed raising mix is a mix that is generally sterile. Okay, that is also loose, so that it helps your seeds to germinate better. Okay, I would not recommend you to use garden soil because it contains microbes as well as it contains clay most of the time, and it's very heavy, so it may retain too much moisture and it can be too heavy, and those factors will affect seed germination. So today I'm going to share with you how you can make your own seed raising mix, because when you go to the nursery, you'll be saying, "What seed raising mix or not?" Some people will be like, got such a thing, man, right? And then how to make your own, and you can buy these materials readily from nurseries. Okay, first you need to buy vermiculite. It looks like this golden flake-like material. Okay, it helps to retain a bit of moisture, and it can help to drain excess water from the seed raising mix. The next material that you need is perlite. It looks like this, quite little bits like that you can see in the video itself. All right, so this helps with drainage mostly. And lastly, the base material is peat moss. Okay, this is this organic crumbly like material. Okay, so to make your own seed raising mix, okay, you need to combine roughly similar amounts of it. You don't have to go and weigh or take measuring cylinder to measure exact. Okay, agak 10. All right, so first we take a peat moss, pour it into the mixing tray, the vermiculite, and perlite. Okay, as you can see that all these materials are pretty dry and very dusty. So you might, in the dry form, they are easy to mix, but they generate a lot of dust. So some of you might want to wear an N95 mask so that you don't breathe in the dust. Or otherwise, you can actually use a bit of water and moisten the material. Okay, so you can use a spade to do it, or in this case, I'm using my hand. All right. For those of you who cook at home, you should wear a pair of gloves so that all that material don't get stuck in your nails. All right. So you mix it up evenly. Okay, so roughly you get something like that. All right. The next thing to do is to fill your seed tray with the seed raising mix. Jacqueline, do you notice something about this seed tray? You see the very large holes?
Yeah, Wilson, why is your seed tray kosong? Why do you want to have these giant holes? Won't everything fall out?
Yes, this is a common problem. And a lot of people, they say, hey, I fill in the seed tray, I can never finish filling it. The mix keeps dropping out. Okay, so the holes are there for a reason, because they're very big at the bottom. It allows you to take out your seedlings much more easily later on. Okay, and it permits drainage, because you must remember, seeds are very sensitive to excessive moisture. If it's too wet, your seeds don't germinate, right? So, okay, how to prevent your seed raising mix from dropping out from the bottom of the seed tray? Let me show you how. Okay, first, put your seed tray into your seed tray into this mixing tray so that you don't mess up your table. Okay, so first you can fill in half of the seed of the cells in the seed tray. Okay, I will not fill up everything because it takes a lot of time. So you firm it down first. I fill in a little bit more, right? Okay, you firm it down. A little. Okay, as a result, you notice that the soil does not drop out. Okay, so next, fill the rest of the seed raising mixture to almost to the brim of each cell. Okay, and you firm it down slightly. Okay, don't press down too hard because that will impede seed germination. All right. Okay, so the first row is done. Right. So next, you need to moisten the seed raising mix. Okay, you can use a squeeze bottle like mine, or you can use a watering can with a long narrow spout. Okay, so that you can target it. Okay, water thoroughly. Next, you can use a disposable chopstick to make a hole, which you will put the seed in it. So, for small seeds, you can sow them about 1 cm below the surface. So, for some of you, you can use a marker to make a 1 cm marker, so that's easier for you to see. All right, so that you can consistently make the 1 cm depth seed hole. Okay, so because it's moist, it's easier to make the hole. Okay, in this case, you see, I use my finger as the guide. Okay. All right, so we're ready to sow seeds. Jacqueline, what are we going to sow today?
So today we're going to be sowing some xiaobai cai seeds. So as you can see, they're very, very small. That's why we put them in this white tray over here. So we recommend that you use a tray or some sort of catchment item, some sort of catchment item to make sure that the seeds don't disappear into the potting mix before you want them to go in. So you should have gotten the packets already. If not, they will arrive to you by the 1st of August.
End of
August, sorry. They'll look like this. They'll come in a sealed packet like this. So we recommend that you pour some out into a tray so that you don't use them all. Wilson, why is that? I always heard it's best practice, but I never knew why.
Okay, number one, the seeds are not contaminated when they are all packed. Okay, what do I mean by that? Because when you are sowing seeds, remember my fingers will be touching the soil, the seed raising mix, and then I will have things on my finger. These are my moisture. All these things will affect the seeds, okay, because it will contaminate that batch of seeds, okay, that you're going to keep. So pour out just enough, okay, for your seed tray, roughly. Alright, I don't need to count one by one and pour it in. Alright, so you just have enough. So you put it into a tray like this, so it's easier for you to pick up the seeds and sow. Okay, but one other thing that I must tell you to do is that please take a blank tag and write the seed or the vegetable that you are going to sow and the date of sowing. Because a lot of vegetable seeds look the same. And then if you don't put this there and don't label, the next thing you will ask is what do I sow? Okay? So this is a good practice. So now we're ready to sow the seeds. Okay? So sowing seeds in a seed tray will help you to moderate or quantify the amount of seeds that you use. You will not overly sow too many seeds which can lead to wastage. Okay, because for some gardeners, they like to scatter their seeds onto a tray or truck, and they end up with a lot of seedlings. And you need to make space for them. End up with a dig them up, which is a waste of seeds. Okay, so using a seed tray is a good practice that helps you to use the right amount of seeds, not leading to wastage. Okay, so I'm going to serve the seeds now. So because the seeds, when they are fresh, they have very high germination rate. So normally, what you will do is to just put one seed into the hole, okay, and you should get a seedling. But some of you might want to put two, all right? So you just take one seed, put it into the hole, and then next thing, you cover it back, okay? So there are many ways to do it. One finger, you use it to cover back the seed hole. The other finger, you can use it to put your seed in so that you don't, because when you close the hole, your finger is going to be moist. And then when you pick up the seed, you'll pick up a lot of seeds, and it's going to get very messy. All right, so use one finger to pick up the seed, drop it in, and then use the other finger to close it back. All right, so you know which cell has been sown, because if you leave all the holes uncovered, the next thing you will be wondering, which hole have I sown? All right, so then this is one way that I can share with you how you can do it. So after you have sown all the seeds, okay, you need to put it in a sunny location. All edible plants are sun lovers. So you need to put it in a place where it gets at least 4 hours of direct sunlight so that they grow healthy and strong. Later we'll show you how these seedlings will look like. And also it must be sheltered from the rain, because you know if these few days we are experiencing very heavy rains, it can wash your seeds and wash your media out, and all your effort will be gone. Okay? So once you have finished sowing everything, remember, at least 4 hours of direct sun protected from the rain. So Jacqueline, you have provided us some negative examples of seedlings that are not healthy. You want to show us and tell us a little bit more?
Yes, so this is a very sad story. So sometimes when you put seedlings in a very shaded location, an area that does not have enough sunlight, what they do is that they etoilate, otherwise known as stretching towards the light. So this is not very good for the seeds. As you can see, they're not very healthy. They tend to fall over a lot because they're so tall, right? And this will basically lead to a plant that will have issues down the road. It will be sickly, it's not using its energy as well as it could. So this is what happens if you let them grow for a while. Sometimes if it's even darker, you get funny colors. So you can see that for these Bayam seedlings, right, they're very, very yellow. This is because they also don't have enough sunlight. So they are also starting to stretch, as you can see here as well. So Wilson, I'm sure you've got some nice vegetables to show us. Do you want to show us what they should look like?
Okay, so I have a tray of healthy seedlings, okay, raised under the light conditions that I have earlier shared with you. So as you can see that the seedlings are all very robust. They're able to stand up on their own. Okay, short and stout. This is what you should be getting, and not the long and lanky ones that look like taugeh. All right. So this is a good tray of seedlings. All right. And you will ask me, Wilson, when to transplant? Okay. Generally, as a rule of thumb, for leafy vegetables, you can transplant them when they have produced at about at least two sets of true leaves. Okay, the actual leaves that look like the vegetable. The first set of leaves are the seed leaves. Okay, and after which the leaves that are produced, these are the true leaves. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you how to take them out. Please don't pull them out, okay, because you'll damage the root system. Okay, so how to take it out? So now, remember that very large drainage hole at the bottom, right? That allows you to push the plug out. All right. So a seedling that is growing properly and strong and healthy, it will produce a very good root system that will hold the whole entire potting mix together. Seed raising mix together. All right. And I can show you in this example. I'm using my finger. Right. You can use a stick or a chopstick and so on to help you push the seedling out. So this is how you do it. It should come out very easily. All right, so you can see a healthy root system, okay, that holds the entire plug together. All right, and why do we use a seed tray like that? First, remember earlier I shared with you, you can actually, measure the amount of seeds that you need so that that does not lead to seed wastage. Next is that you notice the roots come out nicely, so you don't damage the root system at all. Okay, as compared to if you were to sow them all into a tray, you have to thin them out, or if you want to transplant, you damage the seedlings. Okay, and that can lead to transplant shock and set the plants back, or you may even lose the seedlings altogether. Okay, so now I'm going to transplant them into the final growing location. Okay, so I'm using a self-watering trough. All right, so let me share with you a little bit about this self-watering trough. You can see that there's an inner container that holds the growing mix, and there's a wick below that soaks up water from the reservoir pot itself. Okay, so you have water inside there, and then you suck up the water. Okay, and then you put this on, it will take water up from the base of the pot. So a good quality pot, okay, a properly designed pot will leave no gaps for mosquito breeding. All right, so you can see this little hole here. This is for you to pour water in, all right, into the water reservoir. But if you're afraid that mosquito will get in, get some sponge and plug it, and that shall do the job. Okay, so now I'm going to transplant the seedlings into the trough. Okay, today we're going to transplant kailan seedlings. Okay, I'm pretty sure all of you know how big a kailan will get. So you don't plant them too closely. All right, remember that there's info on in the envelope. It tells you how much to space them. Okay.
It also tells you how deep the pot needs to be. So different vegetables will need different depths of pots because again they are different sizes. So this is the best way to make sure that your plants survive and you get something to eat at the end.
Okay. So now we're going to transplant them into the pot. So okay, remember when you dig a hole, when you plant the plug in, remember you don't bury it too deep. The soil level here should be the same as your seedling plug. Don't bury them. If you bury them any higher, it's like I'm drowning you. Okay? Remember that. Okay? So, one by one, I'll take them out. Okay? I would tend to want to stagger the seedlings a bit. Can you tell me why I stagger?
Is it because they don't like each other? Social distancing, 1 meter apart?
No, it's to actually make the test use of space, okay? Because when this plant grows up, it will not block the neighboring plant. All right? I know some of you like to plant side by side next to one another, okay? But you can stagger them so that it gives them ample space to grow. So these are seedlings that are about 2 to 3 weeks old from the time of seed sowing. And here I have one sample or a trough of kailan that is almost ready for harvesting. Okay, 1 more week to go, I can pluck them out and have a good dinner with it. I'm pretty sure this is something that all of you are looking forward to, right? So you can see how big a kailan plant can get. So therefore, you need to give it space. All right. However, there are other leafy vegetables that you might want to grow, okay, such as bayam, which is also known as Chinese spinach. So let me give the time now to Jacqueline to tell you a little bit more.
So some leafy vegetables, they don't need as much space. As you can see, this pot of bayam is very close together. So what's interesting is you can see some plants are bigger, some plants are smaller. So remember Wilson was saying that you need a certain amount of space for the plants to get big. So bayam is interesting because you can eat the bigger ones and the smaller ones will come out fine. So some larger plants like lettuce and kailan, they don't do so well in this sort of planting method, but things like bayam and kangkong, they don't mind being squished together and you can keep harvesting them again and again. So this is how you maximize the space for your pot for these vegetables.
And you can see that from the information leaflet that is enclosed in the envelope, everything is written in there, right? Okay, so now we would like to share with you how you can use recycled containers, okay, for raising seeds as well. And I hand the time over to Jacqueline, who will tell you a little bit more.
Yes, so you can actually use some of the materials around your house to do what Wilson just did. So I actually like to use egg trays. So these cardboard egg trays, I'm sure you've seen them at the market. They also work like seedling trays. So we like the cardboard ones because you see there's no hole, right? So this is a solid thing. But water still comes out through the cardboard so your seeds don't drown. If you're using a plastic egg tray, remember to poke holes at the bottom so that your seeds can still breathe, because if they're underwater, then they're not going to sprout or they might rot. So sometimes we get really, really big seeds. So if you are some of the lucky few that got things like cucumber or bitter gourd or lady's finger, the seeds are rather large. These also become rather large plants later on. So you can see that these are much larger than the xiao bai cai seeds. So what I like to do is that I like to use plastic cups, just like this. So if you order teping, you order your kopi, don't throw away the cup. You can reuse it later on. Wash it thoroughly, and you can use this as a pot for your larger plants.
Okay, wait, before we move on. Hey, you say must have hole at the bottom. How to make holes? Do I use a knife to stab it, which some people do? Use soldering iron to burn it, which will stink the whole house. And then, what other method can you suggest that is easy to do and quick, Jacqueline?
I'm glad you asked. So actually, if you have a strong pair of scissors, or if you have secateurs, if you're a gardener, I'm sure you have secateurs hanging around the house, you can actually just cut the bottom at the side to make a large hole. So remember, Wilson was saying that you need to press the mix at the bottom to make sure that it doesn't come out. So same thing, if you make holes at the bottom, make sure you press the bottom to make sure everything doesn't fall out after that, but water can still come through. So this is important. This is also a good way to share your extra seedlings, because sometimes, you plant too many and then you might need to free up some space. You can also use this to transport your seedlings to someone else to give them the extra plants. Sharing is caring.
Okay, so before we move on, remember that now is a dengue season, right? We must practice responsible gardening. Okay, remember to remove all mosquito breeding habitats, which is pretty easy. Okay, that is to remove all stagnant water from any receptacles that can hold water. And then, if you have any cups and saucers and all that, you can upturn them so that they do not collect water, and keep them under shelter in a cupboard if you are not using them. All right, so I'm going to come to this part of the session, which I'm pretty sure a lot of you are interested in wanting to ask any burning questions. Okay, so let us move to some of the first few questions that are being shared on our NParks social media platforms. Okay, I believe a lot of questions have been, addressed according to what we think, the kind of difficulties and questions that you might have for us. Okay, but I'm pretty sure there's still others. All right. So one of the first questions is that which leafy vegetable is best for beginners to start with? Okay, and are there plants, edible plants, vegetables that will not attract any pests? Jacqueline, from your work in Community in Bloom, I'm pretty sure you've seen a lot of community gardens growing leafy vegetables. From your experience and from your feedback and from their sharing, is there any that actually very easy to grow? Anybody can just pick it up and grow.
So the easiest leafy vegetables, I think, are bayam and kangkong. So these plants, as you saw earlier, they can be planted very closely together and they'll still survive. What I like about them as well is that you can also harvest them when they're small. So if you're not so confident but you definitely want to eat a vegetable, you should plant bayam and kangkong, and you can eat them the minute they come up. So that's a sure win for you if you're just starting out. They're also relatively easy to look after because they will show signs when they need water and stuff like that, and they won't die immediately. So they're quite suited to our climate. I highly recommend them.
Okay, the next part of the question is this. Are there any that will not attract any pests? Okay, because our growing conditions are very different. Okay, and one of the things that I must share with you is that you must give your plants the right growing conditions so that they do not become weak and thereby attracting pests to them. But of course, on and off, you might get a grasshopper that will visit your garden. You might have a snail that comes by during the rainy season, or even a bird that comes down and just pick a seedling out to go and build its nest. There are many possibilities, right? So how do you prevent that from happening? Okay, to be frank, you can just use a netted enclosure. All right, so you can actually buy this the net that can be used to make a netted enclosure pretty easily from large nurseries. Okay, there are many different types. You must use the one that is white in color because that allows the maximum amount of light to pass through. Remember that your leafy vegetables all need good light, strong sunlight, direct sunlight to grow well. So if you use something that's black in color, which is a shade cloth, you're going to shade away the sunlight that the plant needs, and then later you're going to get taugeh looking like seedlings which are very weak. And then green color netting is going to screen off a lot of the necessary light wavelengths that plant needs to grow. So if you go to our local farms, you see that they use a white netting enclosure to grow their leafy vegetables. Okay? Yeah. So let's move on to the next question. Can we mix soil with coffee residues to grow lady's finger and other seedlings? This is something that I always notice. People always ask me, can I use coffee grounds? Because you want to reduce food waste, right?
Of course, everyone loves coffee.
Any issues have you encountered?
So for coffee residues, they're very, very acidic. Coffee is naturally acidic. So we actually recommend that you fully compost the coffee grounds before you use them. So do add them to an existing composting bin. Try not to use them directly because this can burn the seedlings. It can also cause them to stunt and not grow properly.
Okay, so you heard from Jacqueline. It's good to compost them separately in a compost pile before using them. All right, so let's move on to the next question. How do we collect seeds after leafy vegetable sprout? Jacqueline, do your community gardens do that or not?
Yes, of course. Everyone also loves to save money. So if you know what you're doing, you can actually grow your plants to maturity and then they will flower and have fruit. So actually I have some examples for you, Wilson. Let me just show you. So
what is this plant, So cute.
This is a bean sprout. No lah, this is a lettuce.
Where's Jack? Jack and the bean sprout.
Yeah, so this is actually a lettuce. So this is what lettuce looks like when it flowers. You realize it's much taller than what we are used to. So this mysterious thing on the top is actually the flower of the lettuce, and eventually it's going to turn into seeds. So the seeds are very interesting. They actually look like dandelion seeds. They're small, they're fluffy. So when you see that they're dry, you can actually collect them and you can start growing your own leafy vegetables again.
Okay, just now you all have seen how the kailan looks like at the edible stage, right? Then I'll show you a kailan that is flowering. See? That's how it looks like. Okay, it will produce white color flowers, which later turn into fruits, and you can collect the seed. Okay, so we have shown you leafy vegetable plants, right? So how about fruited vegetables like cucumber, lady's finger, and long bean? How do they actually look like?
Okay, so for fruited vegetables, interestingly enough, Wilson, we don't eat the fruited vegetables when they're mature. We actually eat them when they're young. So this is a lady's finger that we know and love. It's nice and soft. This is nice in your fried dishes. But did you know that if you tried to plant that, nothing would happen? So you will need to leave the plant to dry. So this is what a mature lady's finger pot looks like. And what you do is that you can split it open and there will be seeds inside.
Seed. I want the seed.
You want the seed. So this is how we actually save seeds from our previous harvest for us to plant again.
Yeah. So for all these seeds, right, I'm pretty sure you will collect quite a lot of it, over the course of time. So remember to put them in a Ziploc bag, label them, okay, so that you know what they are. Okay, and write the date of harvest because every seed have a lifespan. So therefore, if you keep for example, you have a collection of seeds that have been kept for a long time, probably the viability will not be as high as when they are freshly harvested. So probably you can chuck it out, if it's kept for 2 to 3 years. Just remember to keep it in a Ziploc bag. And where do you store your seeds? Okay, a lot of people will put it inside the drawer and they forgot about it. Some of them will put it inside the garden shed where they will be baked under the sun. So the correct way of storing seeds is to put it in the refrigerator, not freezer. Refrigerator, okay, because the cold temperatures will enhance the viability of the seeds.
So the rule of thumb is that you can keep seeds in the fridge for maybe 3 to 6 months. After that, they might not be alive anymore. So do test your seeds every now and then, especially if you plan on keeping them.
Yeah, and then it's good. How do you test them? You can just take a few seeds and sow them, okay, and watch them grow. And you can note down by the percentage of germination. Okay, you put in 10 seeds, 6 come out with 60% germination. Okay, so therefore you know how many seeds to sow and how much seedlings will come out as a result. Okay, yeah. So I will share with you how to store, how to harvest and store seeds. Okay, these are some good practices. All right, and I'm pretty sure you have questions for us. So let's take a look. All right. So, any questions? All right. Let me take a look.
That's a lot of questions.
Yes. Just give me a bit of time. I'm going through some questions. Okay. One of the first questions is related. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Okay, I missed out. So give me a minute. Okay. Okay. I have somebody called Pisia who asked us this question. What planting equipment do we need for climbers like cucumber? Okay, this question will be addressed in our next episode of Gardening with Edibles Facebook Live. Okay, but I just give you a preview.
So you can use a variety of materials to make trellises. We do recommend upcycling. As you can see, we have this bitter gourd over here. So it's actually held up with these bamboo stakes. You can also use plastic stakes
Okay,
and so forth.
because all these vegetables that you mentioned, cucumber and bitter gourd, they are all climbers. So you need a trellis. It will look something like that. Okay?
Yes, and before people ask why does it look a bit sad, it's because that bitter gourd over there is almost ripe. It's almost ready for harvest. So a lot of your climbers, once they fruit a certain number of times, they'll naturally die. So we recommend trying to pick trellises that are easy to manage. Don't make it too tall. You do need to remove the plant after that.
Okay. So, when Wendy Ng has a question for us. Before we use egg shells or egg trays, do we need to wash? Okay, the paper one, of course, you can't really wash. But of course, you use one that is clean and not soiled. Okay, because if your egg whites are that has dried on the egg tray, they will have bacteria and fungus that will affect your seed germination. Okay, if you have the plastic ones, just give them a wash, dry it, and then after that you can use it at your convenience. Okay.
For the cardboard egg trays, you can sanitize them by leaving them in the sun for a while. That should kill those terrible things on it.
Okay, I have a question here. Okay, my tomato seedling is not growing after 2 weeks. May I know why? Okay, so one of the questions that I want to ask you, is it in a place that has sufficient sunlight? Jacqueline, you want to show me some of the seedlings just now that you showed? Okay. So like using this pot of kailan seedlings to show you, you can see that they are not receiving sufficient sunlight, okay, and their growth will be very sluggish. Okay, so one of the reasons behind it for not growing is that does it have enough sunlight? I can share with you that when I was young, all right, I was still a primary 6 student, and like some of you here, go to the supermarket and buy seeds, at that time, NParks didn't give seeds. So now you guys are the lucky lot, okay? So when your seedlings do not have sufficient sunlight, like when I was growing kangkong, everybody tell kangkong can harvest within 30 days from seed sowing. I waited for 2 months, my kangkong still look like okay, because it did not have enough sunlight. So that's one. Second thing, do your seedlings, turn yellow even though there's sufficient sunlight? Okay, so one of the reasons behind it is that the seed raising mix that you use, okay, might be devoid of nutrients. So you might want to fertilize it a little bit using a water-soluble fertilizer, or check the pH, okay, the acidity of the mixture. Okay, it could be that it's not in the right range, therefore plants cannot absorb the nutrients that they need to grow. All right, and of course other reasons will include is the soil too wet or the growing mix that's too wet, because when it's too wet, your roots suffocate, they cannot uptake nutrients properly, they cannot grow properly, and hence you need to make sure that the roots are functioning properly so that your plants, your seedlings, are able to absorb the nutrients that they need.
We would also like to remind already that if your seedling has 2 pairs of true leaves already, it's actually time to move it to soil. So like Wilson mentioned, the seed raising mix doesn't actually have any nutrients, it's sterile. So you need to move it to proper planting soil for it to get big. Pot size is also important. Sometimes if the plants get root bound because their pot is too small for them, they also will not get bigger. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question here. How long does it take for seeds to sprout? Okay, so depending on the type of seeds or the type of vegetables you're going to sow, okay, Chai Sim Kailan can germinate within 3 to 5 days, okay, and some of the fruited vegetables may need up to 5 to 10 days, okay, so they should germinate within this period. And of course, seeds that are old, all right, they will take longer to germinate, and they may not germinate well, as in the sense that, like I shared with you earlier, the percentage of germination will drop as the seed ages. Okay?
So the rule of thumb is generally have about 2 weeks to see whether your seeds are alive, but we also do recommend checking whether the seeds are in there after 2 weeks because sometimes there might be a very fat minor that has been eating your seeds and you may not be aware of it. So do check your plants regularly.
Okay, next question. Rachel has a question here that says, my house does not get any direct sunlight. Do you recommend using artificial UV light to grow plants? Okay, this is something that I want to kind of clarify. Okay, to grow, what you should be using is plant grow lights, okay, and not UV light. Okay, and plant grow lights, okay, if they are made properly, okay, they would have the spread of light wavelengths that plant needs to grow. All right, and you can use it to raise your seedlings because of the fact that if you use the the tube light grow lights, okay, you probably need at least 2 tubes of light, okay, that's placed very close to the plants. Because the intensity is not very bright, you need to check it out, ask the manufacturer, or if you have a light meter yourself, you can do the measurement itself. But however, I mean, as a general rule of thumb, you can use, the tube light, grow light tubes. You need at least 2, all right, to give you sufficient intensity, and you place it, say, about 5 to 10 cm for seedlings, so that they do not stretch, like we said earlier. Okay, you need to turn it on for about 12 hours daily at least, so that the plants receive the light that they need to grow. Okay, and after which, if you want to continue to let it grow, you can still use the grow lights, all right, and like what I did with my guidance behind, all right, that's grown in the office using grow lights. So as the plants grow and they get taller, you need to move your lights accordingly. Otherwise they'll hit the seeding, and the next thing you'll notice is that the light will burn the leaves. Okay, so let us take a look at any further questions. There are a lot of questions today, Okay, let's see. So Willie has a question here. How frequent we need to water the plant? Once a day? Jacqueline, you tell us a little bit more?
So this depends because everyone's house, everyone's environment is a little bit different. Sometimes your plants might dry out slower, they might dry out faster. So the easiest way to find out is actually you need to get your hands a little bit dirty. You need to touch the soil. So you generally should have your soil moist but not dripping damp. So like water shouldn't be like streaming out from the bottom. If you touch it and it feels very dry and crumbly, then you definitely need to water. So for indoor plants, they generally need less watering because they're not in direct sunlight, there's not that much wind, so they dry out slower. But for outdoor plants, you might need to water them a bit more. Of course, you also need to see what the weather is like. So recently, it's been raining like crazy, so I didn't need to water my plants that much. But if, for example, you've got multiple days of strong sun, you might need to water them daily. Again, the best way to find out is to touch the soil and to see whether it's moist or whether it's very dry.
Okay. Let's take a look at the next question. Khaha has a question for us. Hi. What's the difference between moist soil and wet soil? Okay, something that Jacqueline has mentioned before, but how do you tell? Okay, I'll tell you this. Moist soil would feel something like, you take a water-soaked sponge, you take the sponge out, squeeze out the water, and you touch it. It has no water dripping, but it still feels moist. So that is what we call moist soil. Wet soil or soggy soil we mentioned earlier is that when it's dripping wet or it floods. Okay, so that is wet soil for you. So what you should aim for is moist soil, be it for seedlings and for your vegetables. And like what Jacqueline has mentioned, it depends very much on the soil type that you have. Something that has a lot of organic matter, you put a lot of compost inside, or it's very clayey, right? All these materials will hold a lot of moisture for you, all right? And if you have a sandy or a gritty mix, then that will dry out faster. Okay, so that the soil mix itself affects the amount of water you can hold and how frequent you should water. And of course, it depends on where you are growing the vegetables as well. So like community gardens, you have the ground level gardens, you have sky gardens, you have car park rooftop gardens, and so on. So where it is, from the ground, you have your winds, your exposure to sun, all these things, all these factors affect how fast water evaporates. It also affects how fast your plant uptakes water, okay, from the growing media itself. So all these things, affect how often you should water, and therefore it will affect the moisture level in the soil. But at the end of the day, like I shared with you, you have it on you with your finger. Just use your finger, poke it below into the soil surface and just fill it. Okay, don't wait until your plant has wilted, then you water. It's not very good. Okay, the plant is stressed. Okay, and then you attract pests and you affect its health. Okay, and the other thing about this is that please do not judge whether you need to water or not by looking at the soil surface, okay, or the growing media surface, because you know why? Water evaporates from the surface first. So you always say, oh, it looks dry, I should water. End up you are drowning your plant because the media below is still moist, but maybe it's even wet.
So for people who don't like getting their hands dirty, you can actually use a chopstick to touch the soil. So you realize that if your soil is moist and you poke it down, it will have a bit more dirt stuck to it. Yeah, so you can see there's lots of stuff stuck here. So this is moist soil. If your soil is very dry, it's more likely to come out clean. Kind of like, when you're baking your brownie, if it's not completely baked, it's sticky. If it's baked and it's ready, then it's clean.
Okay. I think we have come to the end, or no, not yet, right? We still got some time. All right, sorry, I'm just kacong a bit. Okay, so that's
first time.
First time, okay? You can see we gabra a little bit.
It's okay.
Okay, but we try our best to answer your questions. Okay, so there's always the first time. Okay, so we have a question here. Xiu Chun has a question. When to add fertilizer? Once a week? Okay, this will depend on the kind of vegetable you are growing, the stage of growth. Like for example, when you are growing a seedling, initially when it comes out, the seedling still has its seed leaves that supplies food. So maybe for the first 1 to 2 weeks, it's okay to go without it. But subsequently, you want to boost growth, right? You need to put in fertilizer. So the fertilizer, I will tell people to do this. Read the label carefully. Always put less than more, because different manufacturers, different formulations, will determine how often you put. Okay, I always tell people, don't always put more, because, you may burn your plant. And next is that any fertilizer that is not taken up by the plant, it may get washed away or leached away. So you're wasting your money. So remember, stage of growth and the kind of fertilizer. Look at the label, okay, and use less than more. And when a plant is vigorously growing, if you grow seedlings like this, all right, you'll notice when they first start, they're a bit slow. Then people say, hey, how come so slow, huh? Wow, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they're still so small. And then NParks, you tell me, hey, in 6 weeks' time, they harvest 4 more weeks only. If at this stage can grow, man. Okay, I'll tell you. There's always a lag phase, okay? The first couple of weeks, the plants are still producing their roots, finding their way. They are still acclimatizing, okay, adapting to the condition as a plant, from a seed to a plant. So it takes about 2 to 3 weeks. And once you move them to the outside environment where there's more sun, they'll start saying, hey, there's resources. I want to start growing. My roots are there already. I want to grow. So that's the time whereby they will start to grow very, very quickly. So that's where they go into what we call the exponential growth phase, whereby very fast, the growth commences. So that's the time whereby you need to feed. Okay, so I hope that gives you a basic concept as to when you should you kind of need to fertilize. Like for example, in this case where you have a lady's finger, it's starting to flower. Okay, that's the time whereby if you grow leafy vegetables, you need to change over from a leafy fertilizer that encourages leafy growth to something that helps with fruiting and flowering. Okay, so initially when you grow your plant, okay, to boost growth, to get the plant strong and big and robust, you need to put in the fertilizer that helps with leafy growth first. But when it's about to start to flower, you change over, okay, to a flowering and fruiting fertilizer for vegetables. Okay, so we have time for just one last question. So let me just scan through the list. Okay, Vinita has a very difficult question here, but I shall try to tackle it. So how do we find the pH of the soil? Okay, how do you find the pH of the soil? Taste it, eat it?
That sounds very unsanitary.
Yes, you shouldn't do that. Okay, because people will say sour and sweet soil, then next thing people will put it in their mouth. No, don't do that. Okay, there are proper soil pH meters that you can use. Okay, there are those that are probes that you can directly poke into the media and measure it. Or otherwise, you can buy a pH pen or probe, which you have to dissolve a sample of the soil in distilled water, which you can get from the supermarket distilled water, and then you stir after you measure. That is generally the gold standard for measuring soil pH. And the soil pH meters can easily be bought on online shopping platforms very easily these days. All right. So I hope that gives you, a glimpse or how you can measure a soil pH. It's not that difficult. All right, and it shouldn't be a nebulous idea that I talk. It can be measured, and that makes you a more informed gardener, so that you know why your plants are not growing properly. Because sometimes it's due to nutritional deficiencies, due to a suboptimal pH range that your plants might not like.
So, Wilson, what is the ideal pH for vegetables?
Okay, generally it should not stray into the alkaline range. That's more than 7. Something about 6 to 6.5, slightly acidic. I would say that is the sweet spot. Okay, but of course you can check on online resources for very specific crops. Okay, because there are certain vegetables that need a very specific pH to grow well. Okay, and all that I will tell you. Even I myself need to refer, because there's so many vegetables, so many ranges, I cannot remember. Okay, so we have come to the end of this Facebook Live session. I hope you learned something, and I hope that we have given you tips as to how to raise your seedlings. All right. Thank you for joining us today and for your support for the Gardening with Edibles program. And I must say this, okay, the Gardening with Edibles program is brought to you, okay, thanks to NParks, okay, and jointly supported by our founding partners such as DBS Bank and the Tote Board through the Garden City Fund. And I hope that it has been a fruitful session for you today.
If you want to watch it again, this session will be put online for viewing on our Facebook and YouTube channels. So you can go and see that. We also have more resources on growing edibles also on these platforms.
Okay, I must also promote myself. There are 3 videos already on NParks SG YouTube channel on how to grow herbs. Okay, so you can go and watch those, okay, after this. Goodbye, and join us again next month. We have another episode on Facebook Live. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice weekend.